Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahasham, Barakahak Wadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. In peace and salutations to you, sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video. And in this video, I'll be profiling an article from endoftheamericandream.com titled, Oklahoma Farmer Says, I Think We're to the Dust Bowl, about the same or worse. And in this article, we're just going to see the continuing issues that farmers are having, not just in the United States of America, but globally with crop failures due to adverse weather events, whether naturally occurring or occurring due to artificial means, artificial tamperings, as we'll put it, by things such as the Doppler radar or the HAARP, which the elites have been using to create adverse events out here to bring about situations like this, to get people desperate for answers and solutions, which would be them accepting their NW0, that GREATRESET, that fourth industrial revolution. But never forget, even that, those elites doing their thing is through the will of the Most High. This is the Most High's movie. He's in control of everything, and he's doing these things to bring about biblical prophecy, bring about biblical judgment, which includes horrific famines taking people out in mass numbers. But let's get into this article. And it was published on May 9th of 2023. Our food prices aren't just going up because our leaders pumped way too much money into the system. All over the world, crops are failing, and that includes right here in the United States. Earlier this year, CNN warned that we are in the midst of the worst food crisis in modern history. And so we really need this to be an extremely successful year for our farmers. Unfortunately, that just isn't happening in much of the country. In fact, one wheat farmer in Oklahoma says that his farm is experiencing the most severe drought I've ever seen. Looks can be deceiving. Rolling wheat fields may appear green and lively to passing drivers, but the farmers who planted the fields see a different story playing out as their crops die off and blow away. We had less than half of a crop last year, and we're probably going to have half of that this year. It's terrible, said 75-year-old Burlington farmer Keith Kisling. We're in the most severe drought I've ever seen. Another Oklahoma farmer, 23-year-old Jacob Webster, is actually comparing current conditions to the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. Jacob Webster, a 23-year-old farmer near Deer Creek in Grant County, spent a recent Sunday evening surveying his wheat fields in north central Oklahoma. His leather cowboy boots were taller than much of the wheat, some of which is yellowing. He's never seen a worse crop, he said. The good thing is today we've got insurance, but the insurance doesn't pay as well as a wheat crop could make, Webster said. With last year not being a very good wheat crop, and this year probably not going to be the best, I would expect some people will probably have to fold up. It's going to be tough. I think we're to the Dust Bowl, about the same or worse. We have been warned for a long time that Dust Bowl conditions would return to the center of the nation. Now it has happened, and not just is the central U.S. going through it, but in the western half of the country, you've seen mega droughts taking place that have been historic and haven't been like that in a couple of hundred years. And then in the eastern half, there's been historic flooding destroying farmers' crops. And this is all through the will of Yahweh Bahasham Yahawashi to punish the United States of America for all the wickedness, the iniquity it's been committing, especially afflicting the apple of his eye, the children of Israel, who are known as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans today. Salakia. But this is 2nd Esdras chapter 15 in the Apocrypha. I'm going to read verses 10 to 13. Behold, my people, your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, the true children of Israel, the highest concentration of which is where? In the United States of America, is led as a flock to the slaughter of America, being the first fired, the last hired here, being profiled and labeled as niggers and spics and tontos and thugs and whores, illegal immigrants, just being looked at the number one problem in society. And we can't forget our history in this country, horrific slavery, lands being taken from us, our women and children being taken from us and raped, us being killed in mass numbers. The list goes on and on. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt. And this isn't talking about ancient Egypt. This is talking about the modern day spiritual Egypt as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8, the United States of America, which is serving in the exact same function that ancient Egypt served for as the children of Israel, served for the children of Israel as a place of hardcore bondage and slavery, as a place of no rest. And then when you look at America, it has a lot of the same practices and customs and symbology as ancient Egypt. Just look at that back of your $1 bill with the pyramid with the all-seeing eye, the Washington Monument, which is an obelisk. You've got places named Memphis, Tennessee, Memphis being a place in ancient Egypt. And there also just so happens to be a mock pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee. You've got the Luxor Pyramid in Las Vegas, etc., etc. But I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, the Most High saving the elect of the nation of Israel, the 1/3 in the U.S., out of the United States of America, protecting them from all these plagues of Jacob's trouble that are going to hit this place, and then ultimately beaming them up onto the chariots, which people ignorantly refer to as so-called UFOs, as 200 million nuclear missiles hit this place and turn it into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and will destroy all the land thereof, ultimately with those nukes. But the Most High is beginning to hit this place with plagues and systematically break it down. What? Adverse weather events, crop failures, economic turmoil, the morality of this country breaking down, the borders dissolving, the list goes on and on. Verse 12, Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and punishment that the Most High shall bring upon it. And here's the main point I wanted to get to. They that till the ground shall mourn. And who are those that till the ground? Farmers. In this case, U.S. farmers specifically. And what did these two farmers just say? We had less than half of a crop last year, and we're probably going to have half of that this year. It's terrible, said 75-year-old Burlington farmer Keith Kisling. We're in the most severe drought I've ever seen. The good thing is today we've got insurance, but the insurance doesn't pay as well as a wheat crop could make, Webster said. With last year not being a very good wheat crop, and this year probably not going to be the best, I would expect some people will probably have to fold up. It's going to be tough. I think we're to the Dust Bowl, about the same or worse. They that till the ground shall mourn, for their seeds shall fail through the blasting and the hail, and with the fearful constellation. What? Adverse weather events, mega droughts, mega floods, Dust Bowl conditions, etc., etc. And what's this going to play into? Emptier and emptier store shelves, which is going to play into what? Food shortages, famines, starvation out here. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 6, verse 22. And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. And what do farmers do when they plant their crops? They sow the land with crops. And we're seeing these sown places are appearing unsown through, again, these adverse weather events. the blasting, the hail, the mildew, the fearful constellations. And what does that lead to? The full storehouses, your grocery stores, Walmarts, Kroger's, Publix, Rouse's. The full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty store shelves due to farmers not planting a sufficient amount of crops to be able to send to them, and then the elites messing with the food supply chain, having food rot at these different ports and at these different barges out at the different oceans or places where these food products come into the U.S., et cetera, et cetera, further leading to the full storehouses suddenly being found empty. Of course, farmers in the U.S. are not the only ones that are dealing with the extreme drought. In Spain, endless drought has severely damaged more than 3.5 million hectares of crops. Southern Europe's farmers are facing a crop crisis. Months of drought has interrupted this year's harvest, and some Spanish ecologists are warning the country may soon be unable to sustain cereal crops such as wheat and barley. Irreversible damage has been done to more than 3.5 million hectares of crops. The main Spanish Farmers Association, COAG, warns, sounding the alarm on a trend it says is being observed throughout much of the country. Crops are failing all over the planet right now, and this comes at a time when global supplies have just been getting tighter and tighter, and famines were prophesied to be one of the major end-time signs to take place to let us know that we truly are living in these last days. This is Matthew chapter 24, verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, race wars, and kingdom against kingdom, major countries going against each other. Hey, China against Taiwan, Russia against Ukraine, the U.S. and the West against Russia, the state of Israel versus Iran, World War III, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. And we're reading about the coming famines, and with the pestilences, what are you hearing about? The bird flu becoming more and more prevalent across the country. I read recently that they're warning about the monkey POX again. We can't forget this situation with the this situation with the C019 that's taken place over the last couple of years. You've got the Marburg. Who knows what else is coming down the pipeline? And earthquakes are happening damn near daily all across the planet. Just recently, you had a earthquake take place around New York, which is unheard of. And then over around New Zealand, there was an earthquake that had taken place that led to tsunami warnings. As a result, hunger is on the rise. In fact, last year, the number of people facing acute hunger increased to more than 250 million. The Global Report on Food Crises, GRFC, for 2023 highlights that the number of people experiencing acute food insecurity and requiring urgent food and livelihood assistance is on the rise. The report indicates that over 250 million people are facing acute hunger, with economic shocks and the Ukraine war contributing to the increase. In 2022, around 258 million people across 58 countries and territories faced acute food insecurity at crisis or worse levels, IPC/CH phase 3 to 5, up from 193 million people in 53 countries and territories in 2021. If you still have plenty of food to eat, that is wonderful. Others are not so fortunate. As you read this article, there are 45 million precious souls around the world that meet the technical definition of being on the brink of starvation. Conditions are particularly bad in Africa. In West Africa, it is being projected that there will be 48 million people without regular access to safe and nutritional food this summer. West and Central Africa has faced increasing risks caused by higher temperatures and erratic rainfall. War in Ukraine has contributed to food and fertilizer shortages in one of the world's poorest regions. The number of people without regular access to safe and nutritious food is projected to hit 48 million during the June-August lean season, according to a regional food security analysis presented by the UN's World Food Program, Humanitarian Agency, and Food and Agricultural Organization, and Children's Agency, UNICEF. In East Africa, the worst drought in 40 years is causing an unprecedented crisis across the entire region. East Africa's worst drought in 40 years has forced millions of Somalis to leave their homes. 5 consecutive failed rainy seasons pushed the fragile nation to the brink of famine, and this year is unlikely to be much different. Last year, when I warned that a horrific global food crisis was on the way, I was not blowing smoke. In the time that it took you to read this article, more people dropped dead from starvation, and way too often it is children that are perishing. Sadly, most Americans are not going to care about the emerging global famine until it affects them personally, and best believe it's going to affect you Americans personally. You Americans are going to get the worst of these plagues and judgments that Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai is bringing to this earth for all the wickedness that it's been committing. And the chief place of wickedness and whoredom and demonic just activity is the United States of America. That's it with this article. And now I'm going to close it out. In 2nd Esdras chapter 16, I'm going to start at verse 17. Woe is me, woe is me. Who will deliver me in those days? The beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death, the beginning of wars, and the powers shall stand in fear, the beginning of evils. What shall I do when these evils shall come? Hey, if you're an Israelite that has come across this truth and the Most High has woken you up to understand that you are an Israelite, do whatever you can right now to stay in the good graces of your power, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, so you can hope to be of that elect number and have that protective hedge over you when all these plagues of Jacob's trouble really kick off. As for the 2/3 of our people in America, you wicked Israelites who are hard-headed and refuse to return under your power, and you heathens, which are just going to be asked out in general, hey, you're going to get it. You're going to get it to the nerve endings. Behold, famine, mentioned again, and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment. Here we see all these horrific things beginning to take place all around us, but for the majority of Americans, especially our people, they don't want to take heed to it. They're actually getting more rebellious, more wicked out here, as it says. But for all these things, they shall not turn from their wickedness, nor be always mindful of the scourges. And when these plagues truly hit, even still for the majority of our people, they're not going to turn to Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai for help. They're going to turn to these Edomites, these so-called white people, these Americans for help. Just look at Hurricane Katrina. Who did they ask for help? Not God, but FEMA. Behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon the earth that they shall think themselves to be in good case. Hey, but that's quickly coming to an end with inflation, which is going to lead to hyperinflation. And even then shall evils grow upon the earth. Sword, famine again. I think that's the 4th time it's been mentioned. And great confusion. For many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of famine. Famine is going to be one of the main plagues and judgments that Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai is going to use to take people out. For many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. If you're not of that elect number, if you escape starving to death, you've got one of these other calamities to just be judged by. Getting killed in these racial skirmishes, getting killed in the civil unrest that's taking place out here. Getting gunned down by these martial law troops, sent to a concentration camp and tortured to death, are being drafted to go fight in World War III are ultimately getting burned up by those nuclear missiles when they hit this place. And the dead shall be cast out as dung, shit, and there shall be no man to comfort them, for the earth shall be wasted, and the city shall be cast down. There's going to be so much death and destruction out here, so many dead bodies, that you're just going to not give a second thought to it. You're going to become numb to it and just step over that dead body, just like you flush that turd down a toilet, and don't think about it afterwards. So that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time, Shalom.